Welcome to episode 386 of the Postal Hub podcast. I'm Ian Kerr. Joining me in a moment is Carmen Cureu. She's Market Research Director at Geopost. We're going to talk about Geopost's most recent e-shopper barometer research. We're going to talk about parcel lockers, returns, consumer communications, and much more. So, coming up in just a moment, Carmen Cureu, Market Research Director at Geopost. Joining me on the line is Carmen Cureu. Carmen is the Market Research Director at Geopost. Carmen, welcome back. We're going to talk about Geopost's most recent e-shopper barometer research. Let's start with a bit of an overview. What does the research tell us about some of the key factors that are driving e-commerce these days?
Well, Ian, really happy to be again with you in this nice conversation about our e-shopper barometer. I would say the driving forces behind e-commerce these days are almost the same as in past years. People continue to buy online because it is convenient. They can buy anytime, anywhere, and they are also driven by price. E-shoppers still feel that buying online will open the door to the greatest deals ever to them. So for sure, in times where economy is not at its best anywhere in Europe, price definitely matters. But I would also say that e-shoppers are also very well aware of their purchasing power that is not increasing these days, but rather going down. And when we look at the number of parcels that are being delivered, we are very stable compared to past years. So we are not going up at the level of every individual e-shopper, but stable. What we see, on the other hand, is that we have more e-shoppers. So more e-shoppers purchasing, and especially much more regular e-shoppers than in past years. When I say regular e-shoppers, people who buy at least once per month. So we now have more than half of European e-shoppers who do that. So I would say we are now in a time when e-commerce is becoming quite mature in Europe and very much a normal habit for Europeans, and not just the occasional leisure shopping process that used to be online in past years.
Well, let's talk about delivery. To be precise, parcel lockers. That was one of the headlines that came out of the latest e-shopper barometer. So what are the findings about consumer delivery preferences and in particular the consumer attitudes towards parcel lockers?
The thing that we have been seeing ever since we started the e-shopper barometer study is that out-of-home was continuously growing in terms of preference. Out-of-home in general, through lockers, through shops, depending on the countries. And I would say the main takeaway of this year's barometer is that we can say that out-of-home is now mainstream. It's no longer just a trend coming up. We have more than half of European e-shoppers who want to be delivered in different places. So in that mix, of course, out-of-home is a big part of it. And this trend has been accelerated specifically in 2025 by the growth of lockers. Parcel lockers are now the second most preferred delivery place for European e-shoppers, 27% of them, ahead of parcel shops, very stable at 24%. And of course, when one preference is growing, another one is slightly eroding, and that is the preference for home delivery. Home delivery has been decreasing over the past years, still remains number one, more than 70% of preference for home delivery. And if we continue speaking about out of home, I would say the mix of lockers and shops is very much depending on the maturity of countries across Europe. We do see gaps in terms of out of home expectations and usages. You won't be surprised to hear that the Baltics and Poland are definitely the most mature ones in terms of out of home preference and specifically locker preference. But we see that Eastern Europe is moving fast. We have some tremendous growth rates in terms of preference in Croatia, in Hungary, for instance. Lockers are now at the same level of preference as home, for instance, in Hungary. Small country, nice country, and preferences are moving really fast for Hungarian e-shoppers. Last but not least, I would say Western Europe is catching up fast in terms of preference for lockers. If we think about France, France has been a country of parcel shops. Still very stable preference for parcel shops. More than 50% of French e-shoppers go for that. But lockers are growing and are now the third preferred option. An increase of 9 points of preference was something that was unthinkable of probably a few years ago, but it is definitely happening.
What about from a generational perspective, or are there some demographics that are more likely to choose parcel lockers for delivery?
From the point of view of generations, we do see that Gen Z e-shoppers come with very specific expectations and trends that they push in e-commerce. For sure, they buy a lot on secondhand C2C platforms, so they are very much a driving force behind the use of out-of-home options all across Europe, because for sure, those secondhand websites go hand in hand with out-of-home delivery. However, it is really interesting to see that when we look at the preferences, Gen Z will not be much higher in terms of preference for lockers or for shops than boomers or Gen X. I would say lockers and shops answer a need for out-of-home delivery for all generations. Where the gap comes into play is the preference that they have and the loyalty level that they have for home delivery. In terms of home delivery, it is true that boomers and Gen X are very loyal to this type of delivery, the doorstep experience that remains the most convenient for them. But when we look at the Gen Z, definitely a big gap. They have a less emotional connection, I would say, with home delivery and doorstep experience, which ranks still first among them, but at a much lower rate than for the older generations.
When we talk about returns then, what do customer preferences look like for returns? Are we again talking about offering multiple options when it comes to the returns experience?
The return experience is one of the toughest parts of the value chain of e-commerce. Returns are still very much present in the e-commerce space, although they are now at what I would call a normalized level. People do not return as much as in previous years. E-shoppers are well aware that now for some web shops, they need to pay for the return. So there's all the things that e-tailers put in place to reduce the number of returns to a certain normal level. And this has happened. Still, the return experience is the one that is perceived as the most difficult for e-shoppers. They want to have a seamless experience. And when they say seamless, they think about not that many steps in the experience. So printing a label is a no-go for sure these days. When it comes to how they want to push the return back to into a carrier network, the doorstep experience is not something that they really expect. Having a collection from home would imply that e-shoppers need to have an extra slot of availability at home, and this does not really go well into their agenda. What they definitely prefer is to have the possibility of drop-off locations, and therefore the out-of-home networks are really what they appreciate, probably the most in terms of returns. What is then essential is to have a location, be it a shop or a locker, close to where they live, or at least on their way to work or to shop, go when they go shopping, etc., etc. The important thing is to be able for them to include that drop-off of the parcel into something that they normally do and not create a specific occasion just for the return.
I suppose for a lot of shoppers, they want that scan event to prove that the returns process has been initiated. So they don't want to necessarily drop it off in a street posting box or things like that. They want to actually have proof that they have returned the item for refund purposes and all of that. But let's move on. I wanted to ask about cross-border. Did this year's research bring up any interesting insights when it comes to cross-border deliveries?
Well, first of all, the cross-border deliveries level of 2025 is the highest level that we've seen since we started the barometer. 63% of European e-shoppers tell us that they purchase in countries different than their own and have their goods delivered. So definitely something that is continuing to boost e-commerce all across Europe. I would say the reasons why cross-border e-commerce is still very much relevant are the same as in past years. For some e-shoppers, it opens the door to offers that they cannot have in their own country, and the price again comes as a major motivation when buying cross-border. If you can buy cheaper in a neighboring country, you will. For sure, e-shoppers who buy cross-border, when we look at their profile, those are the most mature e-shoppers. They are very much at ease with all the processes and they know extremely well how e-commerce works. From the point of view of their maturity, they also are the ones who go the most for out-of-home delivery solutions. It may come as a surprise, but people who buy cross-border expect to have their parcels delivered out of home much more than those who buy purely domestic. So we have 30% of European e-shoppers who purchase abroad that want to be delivered either in a shop or in a locker, compared to roughly 25% for those who buy purely domestic.
The report mentioned customer support and that customers have this expectation now to be able to contact retailers electronically any time of the day. Do you think there are implications for delivery companies along this line?
Well, I would say, Ian, e-shoppers want to be able to contact the e-tailer and the carrier at any time, day or night. Again, it's something that is coming from Gen Z. They go for e-commerce because they can buy whenever they want and from wherever they want. And this whenever they want is really important. Gen Z, they have this image of life that happens now, not later on. So if they need help right now, they want to be able to get in touch with either the e-tailer or the carrier right now and not tomorrow, not within opening hours of a call center, etc., etc. We have this very strong importance of customer support availability at all times for 77% of European e-shoppers. And again, the younger generations, they will go for chatbot support because it's there any time of day, any time of night. They will also go for social media, the multiple channels online. This is what Gen Z favor. And for them, social media is not just a place where they can get inspiration on what to buy or where they can even buy what they want. This is a place where they also want to be able to get in touch with customer support. It's something very new for us carriers. I think it's also something very new for e-tailers as well, but it needs to be included in the bundle that youngsters expect. And for sure, me as an older e-shopper, we prefer, let's say, more the human touch. So getting in touch with e-tailers or carriers needs to happen more on phone, but also the emails. And I would say the biggest challenge for both carriers and e-tailers in terms of customer support is to be able to answer both these needs of older and younger e-shoppers. You need to be present. We need to be present with the same level of information and quality of support on chatbots and on social media as in call centers where people can call and ask about where their parcel is or about where their order is if they call an e-tailer.
Well, let's return then to the bigger picture. Looking at the research that you've done this year, that you've published this year, are there any other perspectives on e-commerce or on e-commerce delivery that you'd like to share?
Well, the striking thing really this year is the maturity that e-commerce has reached in Europe at all stages of the experience in terms of purchases, but also in terms of what e-shoppers expect in terms of customer support, but also in terms of what they expect from delivery companies. Definitely mature e-commerce, but very much dynamic. We have a younger generation that is arriving and has very high expectations in terms of e-shopping experience, in terms of delivery processes, in terms of return processes. And the master word for e-tailers as well as for carriers is that there is no one-size-fits-all approach that can work in e-commerce. We need to answer the needs of younger, older generations. And I would say that is the major conundrum for all of us involved in the e-commerce space.
That's a very interesting thing you just said, though, about it's not one size fits all. And I think that's a really difficult thing for us as well to grapple with when, for example, a few years ago, we were being told that next day delivery or same day delivery was absolutely vital. But then is that really what consumers want? Are they prepared to wait 1 or 2 days if delivery is free? Anyway, I'm rambling now, Carmen. So I won't ask you to comment on that necessarily. But if anybody wants to download or get more information on Geopost's e-shopper barometer, it can be downloaded from the Geopost website?
Yes. As every year, it is available on our website. We also have a comparison tool that allows you to look at countries, put them in perspective with different markets, and see also what are the differences, cultural differences that we still see very much all across Europe.
I'll stick a link to that on thepostalhub.com. So if you go to the episode page on thepostalhub.com, you'll see a link there to the Geopost research. Carmen Cureu, Market Research Director at Geopost. Thank you very much for joining us on the Postal Hub podcast today. Coming soon on the Postal Hub podcast, Lynn Guzal, Chief Retail Officer at POS Malaysia. Mark Fallon from the Berkshire Company joins us to talk about the US Postal Service. Kathy Morrow-Robertson from Logistics Trends and Insights returns. We're going to talk about big and bulky delivery. We'll also be joined at some point in the future by Peter Summers, Alan Barry, and many other great industry experts. Don't miss any of these episodes. Sign up for the Postal Hub podcast. Sign up or subscribe to the podcast in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever podcast platform tickles your fancy. You can also subscribe to the newsletter. Go to thepostalhub.com and you'll find a newsletter or two there you can subscribe to. There's also the Daily Delivery Digest if that's the kind of thing that floats your boat. What else? You can follow me on LinkedIn. Follow the Postal Hub podcast on LinkedIn. Don't use AI. So when you look at all the other slop that's out there, oh my goodness, what's happened to LinkedIn? What's happened to it? It stumbles from one crisis to another at the moment, doesn't it? Anyway, if you want to email me, my email address is ian@thepostalhub.com. I'm Ian Kerr. Thanks for listening in, and I look forward to your company next time on the Postal Hub podcast.